Should you open your spotlight caches for Ravonna Renslayer? This is a Series 4 card that is going to be coming to the game. Spotlight caches are really coveted, so are tokens. Is this card going to be any good in Marvel Snap? So in this video, we're going to look at if you should even spend any of those spotlight caches on her. Should you even spend tokens on her? We're also going to look at some day one decks that you can use for Ravonna Renslayer. Let's jump right in. Step number one is always to understand the card. So Ravonna Renslayer is going to be a 3-cost, 3-power card, and she's going to be ongoing. Your cards with 1 or less power cost 1 less. Minimum 1, meaning it can't get any cheaper than 1 cost. This is a pretty simple to understand card. I think the hard part with this is going to be which cards is it going to affect. I'm going to jump into a little later some of the things that I think are going to be most effective about this card. So to understand which cards this is going to affect, I'm going to Marvel Snap Zone. I have filtered, you click this little, I don't know what to call it, but these sliders, and I've done power 1 or less. And right now I'm limited it to only available cards in game. We'll get to that in a second. So you start looking at these and you're going, okay, and remember, she's 3 costs. So anything 3 or less mean to gain the benefit from her, you are gonna have to play on turn 4, 5, 6, or potentially 7 if Magic's in play. So when I look at this, Warlock and Angela, I'm like, eh. But then I start seeing Bishop and I'm like, well, maybe is there like a bounce type thing that could happen? That could be sort of nice, but let's see what other cards come in that. Widow, all right, maybe late. Bucky, oh, I don't know. We'll see if there's any Destroy. Cerebro, Darkhawk, that's nice to gain some cheapness there. We'll definitely play on this a bit. Dracula, we will even throw that in a deck. Forge, I don't know. A lot of people talk about the goblins and being like, wow, those will be cheaper. Green Goblin feels a little clunky. I have to admit, I will throw him in a deck, but I'm just kind of like, if she's 3 and then you could play him on 4, but then wouldn't you want to play your Hobgoblin on 4 instead? So maybe you play your Green Goblin on 5 or maybe 6 for 2 costs, depending what else you've got. Iron Man, I think that's obviously a great choice, depending on the deck. Ironheart, maybe. Jubilee, Kang, no. I mean, it doesn't matter how much Kang costs. He could, I mean, outside of costing more than 6 or more, I mean, 5 is fine. You're not going to play Kang before turn 5 regardless. No, I mean, we did have a Destroy earlier for Bucky, but I mean, she's ongoing, so you don't want to get her destroyed, so it's unlikely you're going to play her in that. I'd love to explore something with Mr. Negative. The deck archetype, in my opinion, is going to completely die once Mobius comes to the game, which again, I'm very, very sad about. Morbius, I mean, we did have Dracula, so maybe there's a discard opportunity there. A Morph, maybe. I mean, for 2 costs, maybe to play late, if you could swing him in there, I could see that. Mystique, we have had a number of ongoings, one of which Patriot we'll talk about. We had Iron Man, we had Darkhawk, we have Cerebro, so, you know, both of those getting cheaper could be nice. I could definitely see her maybe like a C3 deck. I think maybe that's the one that is maybe most attractive, because now you're playing Cerebro and Mystique on turn 6 plus another 2-cost 3-power card. I could see that being pretty solid. Then you've got Psylocke, maybe for 1 cost, that's not so bad. Especially late, maybe. Taskmaster, we do play with that a little bit. White Tiger and Wolfsbane. Wolfsbane, again, maybe with that Bishop Angela stuff. I don't know. We'll see that there's maybe an opportunity there. White Tiger, I don't think so. So when I first look at this, nothing really jumps out at me, maybe except for the C3. I would definitely then look at what cards are we going to get in the future. So I change the slider, I come down here and I just click anything that's maybe not showing up. So that way I know it is something that's coming in the future. What does this add? Adds Blink, 2/1. That's a card that you get more power and you move. I didn't really see any move cards there, so I'm not really going to do that. Gwenpool on reveal, double this card, assuming it stays that for 1 cost. 1/2, maybe, I guess. See what else do we have in here. Mephisto for 5 cost. If you win this game, double your winnings. I could see that, especially given that I think that originally I was planning on playing Mephisto with Mr. Negative, and now I'm like, well, I don't want to do that because of Mobius. You know, getting Mephisto out on 5 and still having a good turn 6 play, maybe I could see that. Discard random, it's a 4/0 on reveal. Set this card's power equal to the power of a random card in your deck. I hate that card. I mean, it's like a morph, but for you, and now it's 3 costs. I mean, this should be 3 costs as is anyway. And that's pretty much, oh, and Surtur, if you move the Human Torch to this location plus 10 power. I could see it being good for that. And now we're talking about that on top of potentially the blink card. So maybe there's some move aspects there. Maybe, I guess, you know, maybe if there's some other move cards that benefit from that. But right now, again, I'm not loving what I'm seeing here. Okay, so let's go over and look at the decks. As always, shout out to Marvel Snap Zone and their deck builder. Love using this. It's easy to transition in game. I highly recommend checking it out. We will have links to all these decks in the description below. So first up, let's do pure Ravonna. Now, I will admit this might not necessarily be a good deck, but I really wanted to lean into the pure Ravonna aspect of the card, of just making those cards with 1 or less power cost 1 less, to see if I could pull off anything. It might end up being more of a meme deck, but let's just go with it for now. So as mentioned, the idea is to get anything with 1 or less power cheaper, which is basically everything except for a few cards, right? And the reason those cards are there is for Dracula. The hard thing about Ravonna that I'm finding when I was doing deck building is that she's 3 cost. So you don't have a lot of opportunity to gain from the cards that we saw on that list. So when I'm looking at this, I'm going, all right, well, what can I really benefit from? Iron Man and Mystique are always obviously good of that list. Dracula, how can we get anything there? Let's build in big, powerful cards that he could potentially discard. Okay, I like all that. We've got the goblins, but again, those can be specifically Green Goblin, because if you play Ravonna on 3, well, then you're going to want to play Hob on 4. Then you get to 5 and you're looking at, okay, so what can I play on 5? Now, Iron Man is obviously not going to cost 5. He'll cost 4. I mean, I guess you could do Iron Man and maybe Nebula at that point if you haven't played her yet. But again, you've got to have power on the board somewhere. And at this point, you've probably not got a whole lot of anything other than Ravonna. I mean, maybe you could put it on Dracula, but again, I don't necessarily love that. And then on 6, you're looking at, okay, what else do I have? All right, and it's not like you're going to put a lot of cards out there. So Mystique, again, that's going to be 2 cost. Maybe she copies the Iron Man. It's like, that's fine. And maybe you put the Red Skull somewhere. So ideally, I think you'd go, okay, you get one of these 1 cost cards out. And that's why they're in this deck, because I'm trying to get something on the board early to gain some points, because I don't have anything for turn 2, nothing other than another 1 cost card. And then on turn 3, I'm potentially either goblining or Ravonna if I have one of those. And then on 4, if I haven't played Ravonna, I'm definitely playing Ravonna and a potential another 1 cost, I guess. And then after that, it's like I mentioned. So I don't know. I just really don't love how this all feels. I think there's some interesting aspects, but it feels very meme to me. I obviously leaned in on the Dracula aspect of things. I think some alternates here are, you could take Green Goblin out, because I just think that he is just too difficult to play around the 3 that you need to really get Ravonna going. You need to play her on either 3 or 4, right? And if you're doing that on 4, you're never going, if you play Ravonna on 3, you're never going to play a Green Goblin on 4, more than likely. I mean, more than likely, you're going to Dracula, Iron Man, Hobgoblin. You're going to be looking at something like that. You're not going to play Green Goblin unless you just have nothing else to play. So for that reason, I don't know if I'd want to keep him in here. I'd maybe take him out. The other one I thought about maybe taking out is Red Skull, depending what avenue you want to go. Zola is another card you could think about trying to put in here. It's going to be 5 cost. So maybe you could get, gosh, I don't even know, an Iron Man down on 4, your Zola on 5, and then you've got maybe but then you don't have your Dracula out. It's like, what are you doubling up with your Iron Man? Maybe you're doubling up one of the ones, and then you play one of your Dracula or something on the other Iron Man spot. And Mystique, I mean, that could be interesting. So you have an Iron Man in each lane and then a Mystique and a Dracula in one. I mean, again, if you can get enough power out on there, so maybe something like an Ebony Maw is a little bit better than a Sunspot in this, because you know you might put your Iron Man in that lane, but again, that leans heavily in on that Zola. The other one I thought about this with Red Skull is maybe if you move away from the Dracula route, you could go into Taskmaster, you add 0 to this, so you on turn the end of turn 4, you 0, and then you Red Skull 5. And then on 6, you've got your Taskmaster for 4, and then you could potentially play a 2 in there somewhere. I don't know. It's something to think about. But again, what's the 2 that you're going to play? I mean, I guess you could Green Goblin at that point, which wouldn't be that bad on a final turn. You got it a little risky, though, because typically by then a lot of people are filling their lane, so you could end up with -3 on your side. But all in all, again, I just wanted to do a pure Ravonna one, so I don't want to spend any more time on it. Let's jump to the next one. I think this is probably the most obvious. Cerebro 3 Ravonna. I was playing around with this. Now, it's funny that I say it's obvious because it's easy to skip, but this is pure and simple, just leaning in on Ravonna with Cerebro. So Cerebro Mystique will cost 2. So on turn 6, you could potentially play Cerebro and Mystique with Invisible Woman, with Blade, I mean, that's really what you're leaning in on there. Now, you obviously want to get them earlier if possible. So if you play her on 3, I mean, the perfect line is, I'd say Invisible Woman 2, Ravonna on 3, Cerebro and Mystique on 4 behind Invisible Woman, but that's pretty telling. I'd say your opponent probably knows what that is. And then at that point, you've got pretty decent options here where you're looking at, you know, maybe any 3 and I guess maybe Blade. Now I've got Mobius in here right now. So, I mean, you could play Mobius and or Rhino or any other 3, which is good with Juggernaut, Crystal, etc. And then on 5, you could play Boo Marvel. And then on 6, you could play Valk and Blade. So it sets up pretty good. I feel pretty nice about the curve. If you don't want Mobius in here, I would recommend putting in Sentinel. I mean, the alternates in and out of this are any 3s. Whatever 3s you're comfortable with. 3 powers, I'd say. I like Shadow King in here now just because of what's happening with Collector and bringing anything down. I think generally speaking, that makes this deck pretty strong. Same thing with Valkyrie. I think she just makes it so that you make anything that you've got on your side a 3, which also gives you the opportunity to potentially bring in cards that are cheaper ones that could give you the opportunity to make them 3s, like a Hood, or even your Demon. You're fine changing your Demon to 3. So, I mean, maybe you swap in the Hood for one of these as well. It's up to you ultimately, but I really like how this could potentially shape up. I think this might be one of the better versions of it, but we'll see. All right, next we've got the makings of what I think is starting to build towards what I think is going to likely be her best option. This one is our Dinosaur. This leans into, again, your Darkhawk, your Iron Man, your Mystique. All of those are pretty good. It also plays into the Widow, which I would probably not play until a little bit later, but I think that it is an option that you could definitely play. You've obviously got your Korg, your Rock Slide to build into your Darkhawk. You've got your Moon Girl to help with your Devil Dino. You've got your Coulson to help with your Dino as well. Absorbing Man also can double up on your Korg, your Rock Slide, your Agent Coulson, maybe your Moon Girl. Not that you'd ever necessarily do that. You could do it with your Black Widow as well. I think that generally speaking, that's all pretty solid. If you're looking at alternates out, I've got potentially your Absorbing Man and your Agent Coulson. I would look at maybe Agent 13 in, Mirage, Cable, anything to sort of build up cards for Devil Dino. Fury, maybe your America Chavez, so that way you're getting more consistent with your deck. Again, you can play with Zola. Maybe you have an ISO lane for Devil Dino or your Darkhawk, and then you Zola that and then move it to the other 2 lanes. You could always play around with that. Again, that can get pretty difficult anytime you need to leave a lane into one card and then Zola it. It's like you're throwing that lane. There's some deception tactics there, but I like what's sort of brewing here. I think it could be definitely pretty good. Again, I think the Darkhawk type with Ravonna makes a little bit of sense. So when I go to the final sort of deck that I came up with and thought of, it leans pure into the Darkhawk. So, I mean, maybe this one's a little better to give you some options, but if you're going pure Ravonna Hawk, very similar to the deck we just looked at. I have Psylocke in this version to potentially try to get Wong on 3, because I want to try to potentially build up and make those rocks even stronger with Rock and Rock Slide and Korg. You could even play your Black Widow on there. But if you do that and you play your Korg on, I mean, you might be Korging on 1, you're Psylocking on 2, you're Wonging on 3. So then you get to 4 and it's like, okay, well, what do I want to play on 4? You want to get your Ravonna out at some point so that you can make these cards cheaper, right? So then on 4, you potentially Ravonna. I mean, maybe at that point you Korg. And then at 5, I've got Iron Man in here again, just to give Mystique a potential option to copy. I don't know if I love that, but, and with Wong, it can get a little clunky. You're like, well, why do you have Wong and Psylocke in here? Maybe you could change that up. And yeah, you could. This gets a little bit greedy into going for the Darkhawk. That's sort of the point a little bit, is like I'm leaning into that Darkhawk a little bit more. Obviously, America Chavez to be consistent. Iron Man, I think, could be potentially hard to play off or play out. But if maybe you don't want to play that Wong, you don't like it, you play Ravonna on 3, you play your Darkhawk maybe on 4 along with your Korg. And then on 5, you're Mystiquing for 2. You've got another 3 with your Rock Slide. And then, you know, on 5, you're looking at maybe your Rock Slide again, and or your Absorbing Man for 4. You know, there's some option there. And then on the last, or it would be nice, is you've got your Black Widow for 1. So on 5, you could Absorbing Man and Black Widow. So that way on 6, you know, you're looking at whatever you want. So some options there, but it kind of depends how you want to play it. I think, again, just looking at these, I sort of feel a little better about multiple options here, but it might be a little much. We'll see. Again, I wanted to go pure Darkhawk here. And I think this one is just the simplest. You know, Cerebro 3, it's like, okay, yeah, got my Cerebro out there. We got Crystal to give us some more cards. I'm curious to see which of these I think feels better. But again, when I play and think about Ravonna, there's not a lot of options out there for her. I think the pure Ravonna deck, again, it's pretty memey. I just think it's not really going to do a whole lot for you, but there are options out there. So of all these decks, like I mentioned, these last three are probably the ones that I would test out and want to do a video on and see how I do with them. I'd love to hear from you which decks you think are going to be the best for her. I still like, so circling back to the beginning, should you open for her? My opinion, absolutely not. I would not spend any spotlight caches on this at all. The graphic that we've got for it, it's going to be a little blurry, but you can see it in the easy skep section. I'm going to do a video on the full graphic, so that way I don't want to spoil that too much. But I think that she's just something you want to skip. Look, Jean Grey's decent. I think she's an okay card. Zabu's a fantastic card used everywhere. I will say, if you're a player, a newer player who has none of these cards and you've got a bunch of spotlights saved up, maybe. But I think typically anytime you've got a series 4 card, you're going to always want to spend tokens to get the card. You're not going to want to spend spotlights on it unless the other spotlights are cards that are really good and you don't have. So I think Jean's not quite good enough. Now, Jean could be in that Cerebro 3 deck too, you know, so maybe you're really a Cerebro 3 player and you want both those cards, and that might make sense for you. But I would not personally broadly recommend pulling for this card in a spotlight cache. So that's all we got. Ravonna, again, I'm not super high on her. We'll see what people think. I am wrong about Loki. I'll be wrong again in the future, but I think those are the type of decks you're going to be looking at trying to build for Ravonna Renslayer. I'd love to hear, like I mentioned from you, what decks you're going to build with her. Comment below, come to the Discord, Twitter, all those links are in the description below. Appreciate you making it this far. If you want to further support the channel, please consider hammering down that like button. Until next time, we hope you have a wonderful day.